Very good evening. This, for all practical purposes, should be the last sessions that we are dealing with, and especially given the fact that the next one is going to be the last. The next session is going to be an open house at my end, for a simple reason, because on the Friday after that, I would anyway not be in Pune. So technically, with some topic at hand to talk about, I think this is the last one that I'm dealing with as far as this time of the year is concerned. Uske baad jo kuch bhi hoga will happen once I come back in July. So the first Friday after the 10th of July, because I'll be coming back on the 10th of July, is the Friday on which we come back again to go about talking about whatever is as far as the world is concerned once again. Okay, so ये technically मेरी तरफ से आखिरी बार है that I'll be focusing on a topic per se, and we'll be talking with a topic at hand. Next week when I come back, I plan to leave it as open as is possible for a simple reason, because that's going to be my last Friday. Okay, now topic क्या है? So obviously, on one hand, you have this Middle Eastern business which is going on, but I'm not going to deal with that for a very simple reason, because given the fact that one of the parties to the ceasefire is Donald Trump, one did like to wait for some time before commenting anything on it. अगर एक पार्टी उसका डोनाल्ड ट्रंप नहीं होता, there's a possibility we might have decided to talk on that. But given the fact that Trump is one of the parties to this ceasefire, I think it would be way too adventurous to talk about it as of now, knowing fully well that next 2 weeks ke this period mein, at any point of time, anything can go wrong. Okay, and given the fact that we are in the Middle East, things are not right until and unless they are not proven to be wrong. So वो वाला किस्सा है. So things would turn out to be right only if the peace holds for these 15 days. It's only then that we would be in a position to say that, okay, ठीक है, सब कुछ ठीक ठाक था, and we needn't be worried about anything. But knowing fully well, this is the Middle East, well, anything can go wrong at any point of time. And with so many people almost waiting for things to go wrong, there's absolutely no reason why one should be talking about that. But then, of course, if there are questions about it, we'll talk about it towards the end. That's not what I'm planning to talk about as of now. एक चीज था in the last frontline that we did talk about when we did talk about these 5 assembly elections. But then again, I'll make a point about that towards the end. The topic that I plan to talk about for today is this very rare case that has come from Tamil Nadu, wherein the Sessions Court has awarded the death penalty to 9 police officials. Okay, इतने बड़े पैमाने पे police officials को, now I'm using the term police officials precisely because of the fact that some of them are police officers and some of them are mere police personnel. And that's the reason why I'm using this term called as police officials. At no point of time ever in our history since 1947 have these many number of police officials at one and the same time been awarded the death penalty. And that is what makes this case a completely different one. It is a truly rarest of rare sort of a case. We are not very sure about this as to would this hold, would this not hold, for a simple reason, because according to the rights that are vested in them, they have every right to go on appealing this. And of course, given the even the Sessions Court judgment is very clear about it, the punishment would stand awarded only when the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court confirms it. So what has now got to happen is the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court has got to confirm this sentence. If this sentence is confirmed by them, the sentence stands. But along the way, there's quite a possibility that this sentence is going to be appealed at practically all ends. So it would be appealed in the Madras High Court, it would be appealed in the Supreme Court of India, it would be appealed at so many different ends. And knowing fully well as to how do things work in India, one shouldn't be at all surprised with this that maybe this might pan out in a completely different manner. जब ये केस शुरू हुआ था, 2021 May, there were 10 people in this. So 10 people who were drafted in this as people who were defending themselves of the charges laid against them. One person died of COVID during COVID. And that's the reason why we are left with 9 people to whom this death penalty was awarded the other day around. Okay, the case dragged on for 6 years, and of course it's like अपने तरीके का एक और अलग record भी वो establish करता है for a very simple reason, because it got completed in record time. So if you just look at the time frame in which this has happened, so this happens in 2020, 2021 May the proceedings begin, and 2026 May the case stands closed with these 9 police officials being awarded the death sentence. So in a way there is a certain sort of speed to all the proceedings, and of course it did sort of benefit all along the way for a whole different set of reasons. Evidences किस तरह से record किए गए, judiciary को problems थे. So the Sessions Court had a huge number of problems against this police station, to the point that along the investigations, this was again possibly the first time in India's history that a police station had to be sealed and its charge had to be handed over to the Revenue Department to secure the evidence that is lying within the police station. So when the investigation started, the judicial investigation started, this was another rare thing that had happened. We don't have many cases of this type. Many in the sense that we hardly have any cases of this type. कि जिसमें इस पुलिस स्टेशन को सील किया गया और इसको सील करके रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट को हैंड ओवर किया गया टू टेक केयर ऑफ द प्रेमाइसेस, so that the judiciary could go about recording all the evidence that was available in the police station. So many different ways in which this case stands out all by itself. And what's very interesting is not many people in India are talking about it. So, of course, it's been talked a lot about in Tamil Nadu, but then for a completely different set of reasons. Tamil Nadu may, obviously, you have assembly elections which are due. And that's one of the reasons why the way in which it could have been played around with, it's definitely not been played around in that manner. So it's been talked about in Tamil Nadu, it's been talked about in the human rights communities of India. It's been talked about in all the stakeholders who are interested in preventing more custodial deaths in India. It's been talked about in all circles which are related to police reforms. In a big way, in terms of what exactly are the problems, what are the lapses, what can we learn from the judgment in terms of how do we need to work with the systems more better. So it's been talked about in all these sorts of situations. But then at a general public level, well, that's not the level at which we are talking about it. And there's not much that is been at all discussed about it. One can understand it for a simple reason, because as I said, the case now enters into what is called as its appeal stages. And given the fact that it goes into the appeal stages, you just don't know what exactly is it that is going to come out of it. So one will have to wait for it. Okay. Now, a couple of things related to it is what need to be talked about. And that's the reason why I decided that, well, this is an interesting one to talk about this evening. ये case COVID restrictions के साथ ताल्लुक रखता है. So to begin with, this was a case about someone breaching COVID restrictions, and especially those restrictions which were related to timings. Okay. This is a case which happens in a very small town. Now, in those types of places, practically everybody knows everybody around. Okay. It's possibly one of those cases which could easily have been forgotten. One of the statistics which we have is India possibly has close to 5 custodial deaths per day. Every death is not torture. Every death is not something that is going to implicate the police into it. Custodial deaths are deaths of both types, in terms of the fact that these can be under trials. That is, people against whom judicial proceedings have been instituted, but they have not proceeded along. So you have been booked, you have been remanded, But your judicial businesses have not taken off, and that's one of the reasons why you're yet in custody. And second is the trial is over, you have been punished, and you have been remanded to custody, and that's the reason why you're in custody. So every custodial death is not about police torture. Every custodial death is not intentional in terms of somebody has decided to kill you, and that's the reason why you're dead. But on an average, you have something like 5 custodial deaths per day. Of course, in a country which has its prisons in a situation wherein the total number of people in prisons is much more as compared to what ideally should have had been. So, carrying capacity of the prisons and actual population lodged in the prisons, there's a complete asymmetry about it, and there's a total disproportion about it. So, in that sort of a situation, you have tons of those types of studies and reports which are lying all over the place. You just have got to tap into it, and you will get a whole world of information in terms of how bad India's prisons are. Okay, they are worst. They are absolutely worst. They are unhygienic, they're not well looked after. Well, as an under trial or as somebody who is serving punishment, you're nobody's concern. You might as well die and they're least worried about it. So poorly lit hai, poorly maintained hai, unhygienic hai, tamam kisam ke problems hai. Prisons were being talked about at some point of time during COVID, and they were like horrible places at that point of time. But even beyond COVID, they continue to be the same sort of horrors that they are. Then you have those unique practices which are related to casteism and so on and so forth, as far as running prisons are concerned, against which the Supreme Court of India has passed strictures, but unfortunately enough, there hasn't been much which has been done about it. Okay, prisoners normally are seen as unfortunate people. You have got to use all your skills, all your talents to survive it. And if at all you survive it, great. If you don't survive it, God bless you. There's nothing much that can be said about it. So you have the Stan Swami case of a prisoner who was lodged in Taloja jail and finally was dead. You have Dr. Teltumde, who was lodged in prison and who ultimately survived prison and came out with that fabulous book about his experiences in prison. And then you have a whole range of people in recent times who have been to prison for dissent, who have been to prison for acts of defying the government and the state, who have managed to sort of secure their releases, and who have come up with some very good memoirs in terms of giving you a wonderful idea about what exactly is the horror as far as India's prisons are concerned. Okay. So if you at all feel that you have not had your share of horrors, or you're not feeling miserable or horrible enough in your life, do something and end up in prison, and you would feel that. So that's like the bare minimum that can be suggested. So हर एक बंदा custodial death वाला torture की वजह से मरा है ऐसा कोई guarantee नहीं है. But at 5 per day, well, I believe that's a huge number that we are talking about. Most of the custodial deaths come from the regular sort of suspects. So you have West Bengal that tops the chart, you have Bihar, you have Uttar Pradesh, you have Andhra, you have Gujarat. So if you look at the first 5, you're going to get all of them. And it's but obvious that these are going to be the states which are going to be right at the forefront of it. Prisons are looked after as part of law and order, which is basically a state subject. So it's the state governments which are responsible for it. And obviously state governments have a reason to not take care of prison populations, not be worried about them, for a very simple reason, because well, they just don't deserve to be looked after. So it's as simple as that. So if you just look at the budgets as far as prisons are concerned, you would be horrified at the amount of money that is spent as far as these people are concerned, where you don't take care of them to secure their releases and so on and so forth. Well, that's way too much that we are talking about. So already you have a structural problem as far as prisons are concerned. We've been trying out different sorts of reforms, but some of them have had a limited success, and most of them have just not got off to any sort of great start. Do you need so many people in prisons? Well, the jury is out on that one. But then the whole problem is the judiciary problem in terms of the number of courts, the number of judges, the number of prosecutors automatically sees to it that well, you're going to have more under trials for a simple reason, because the judiciary is overwhelmed. So since you are completely overwhelmed, there's just no way by which I can go about meaningfully processing cases in time. The unfortunate part of the whole story is, just as the death penalty is a certain sort of an asymmetry in terms of who exactly are the people who are awarded the death penalty, same happens as far as prisons are concerned, as to who constitutes the largest population as far as prisons are concerned, also happen to be people in Indian society who are completely disadvantaged. So you would have the highest population numbers in terms of per million of the population. In that sort of a descending order, you would always have scheduled tribes. You would have the minorities, especially the religious minorities, the scheduled caste, and the OBCs. So if you look at total population में इनका participation कितना है और prisons में इनका participation कितना है, you are like overwhelmed by the fact that as compared to their participation in the population, their participation in prison population is much higher. So, and that's for a simple reason, because these are people who are in some way or the other nobody's concern. Okay, unfortunately, the Tamil Nadu case is a case in which we don't have that allegation of people who were imprisoned and the police officials belonging to a certain sort of a situation in which there was a caste asymmetry. So, fortunately or unfortunately enough, इस केस में कास्ट असिमेट्री की बात नहीं की जा सकती है. सो इसकी वजह से ये थोड़ा अलग किस्म का मामला है कि वी आर नॉट एग्जैक्टली टॉकिंग अबाउट द फैक्ट दैट वेल द पीपल हु वर पुट इन प्रिजन एंड द पीपल हु टॉर्चर्ड देम were people who belong to a very dramatically and drastically different set of castes. Okay, they more or less were similarly middle caste, lower middle caste किस्म के लोग हैं. Dono, the police officials who were involved and this father and son duo who were involved, and that's the reason why this case becomes a completely different one. Okay, where does the impunity come in from? Well, there are multiple sources. इस केस का स्ट्रक्चरल प्रॉब्लम जो है वो थोड़ा सा इंटरेस्टिंग इसलिए है, we had no memory of very rigorous lockdown of the sort that the COVID lockdowns were supposed to be. Okay, and I'm using the term supposed to be for a very simple reason, because we know across the country there were situations in which the demand as far as the lockdown is concerned on paper and the way in which the lockdown actually gets practiced in reality were at a certain sort of variance with each other. Okay, but then ऐसे lockdown का कोई memory नहीं है. So until and unless we didn't lock down everything as far as COVID is concerned, we never had a memory of this type, or institutional memory of this type, as to how are these lockdowns supposed to be enforced? What is it that we are supposed to go about doing with it? Okay, so if you have the state declaring that, well, there is a lockdown and you're supposed to go about dealing with it as harshly as is possible, because you have got to stop in any further infections. So in that sort of a situation, how should the lockdown be enforced? We have no memory of that. The last time you had something like this being done was during British times, sometime after the First World War, but then that was almost 100 years old. So we didn't have any institutional memories. We did not have any idea in terms of how should this lockdown be enforced. Now that automatically means that at the level of every locality in India is the local police officials who are going to understand the protocols and who are going to go about enforcing the protocols. So it just depends on what is their understanding as far as the protocols are concerned. So the government has issued a whole list of do's and don'ts. Now it comes to their own understanding of this as to how does this actually work in our police jurisdictions, what needs to be done, and what are the exceptions that we need to carve out for this. So every police jurisdiction in India is going to have a completely different set of challenges, which possibly cannot be compared with some other police jurisdiction. And in that sort of a situation is the local police officials who have got to take this on themselves in terms of how do you understand this? What part of it do you go about enforcing in what manner? And what are the exceptions that you need to carve out? Given the fact that we possibly live in a completely different set of a completely different situation altogether. So along the coastlines where you have the fishing catch coming in, now in those police jurisdictions, police have to think about this completely differently in terms of how long should markets function, how long should they be kept open, what should be done in terms of securing people's livelihoods, and so on and so forth. And this is just one example. There are tons of them all across the country. So in that sort of a situation, you suddenly start realizing that the police have huge amount of authority. Okay, because they have this vast authority with a completely new set of legally binding do's and don'ts in terms of what exactly is it that they're going to go about doing. So it's like it's up to them to decide as to what do they go about doing. Okay, how do they enforce this? Now, just as you have a problem with the judiciary not being up to the mark when it comes to delivering cases and judgments in time, you have more or less the same problem as far as policing in India is concerned. So, how many police per 1 million of the population do you actually need? How many do you actually have? How many of them are well trained, well armed, and are sort of adequately motivated to go about doing their jobs? Well, all of this is open for all sorts of debates for a simple reason, because all of this is highly inadequate. So per 1 million of the population, adequately जो police society ratio होना चाहिए, we just don't have that in India. Most of these are people who are not trained. As far as motivation is concerned, for something similar, at least in terms of the number of hours which they are putting in some sort of a private corporate sort of a setting, on an average, you can say that they would at least be paid 1.5 to 2 times more as compared to what they end up being paid as far as being part of the police is concerned. In cases, it might be even higher than that. So, you have a problem with motivation, you have a problem with manpower, you have a problem with training, you have a problem with practically everything. For all of this, sort of what takes over and what becomes absolutely in some way or the other very dominating is the fact that he's the police. So the idea that somebody is wearing the uniform, the fact that somebody is entitled to call himself the police, is acknowledged to be so by the state, gives him a completely different power altogether. So technically speaking, he is not very different from any one of us. So they are as human as all of us are. Possibly in a profession which is not much well paid for, not much well looked after, and so on and so forth. And yet, in some very dramatic way, they are very different from us for a very simple reason, because they wear a uniform which carries a certain sort of an influence, which breeds a certain sense of power. Okay, in a number of cases, between common average Indian citizen and the Indian state, the first point of contact is the police. So for all practical purposes, we possibly don't meet revenue officials or civic officials that regularly that we meet the police. We possibly don't come across if you are asked about who are the civic officials in your locality that matter to you, you possibly won't know anybody of them. Okay, not that I know my policeman on very affectionate or very close sort of basis, but I at least know कि वो police है. Just because the fact that he dresses differently as compared to everybody else. Okay, so in most of the cases, he is the first level of contact between what is called as state and society. He's that first sort of linchpin as far as the interaction between state and society is concerned. And that's the reason why he becomes very important. He becomes somebody, I'm using the term he for a very simple reason, because for all that we would expect, the total number of women in the police force abhi bhi is, for all the efforts that we have been making, not at level of parity as far as the men are concerned. Across the country, whenever you have got to think of police, it's invariably men. Okay. If you are thinking of men police officials, good. If you are thinking of women police officials, well, the simplest thing that I can tell you is Santosh, if that rings a bell at all. This is basically a film about two women police officials from Uttar Pradesh. एक ऐसा फिल्म जो इंडिया में कभी भी थिएट्रिकल रिलीज उसको नहीं मिला. ऐसा अगर उस फिल्म का सेंट्रल कैरेक्टर्स मेल होते तो शायद नहीं होता. Okay, though everyone knows as to why has the film not been released, but then that's a different story altogether. So the face of the police department is yet very masculine. For all the efforts that we are making, is yet about men. Police can be brutal towards each other. We have that celebrated case of this woman police official who was murdered by her male colleague in Maharashtra, in a case which took its own sweet time in terms of reaching closure. So ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि they're like above or beyond anything. The same set of passions, furies, fears that animate all of us are what go about animating them. They're not very different from us. The only thing that sets them different is the fact that they have this sense of power, sense that comes from wearing the uniform, a sense that comes from having those titles in terms of the police hierarchy, a sense that comes from the fact that, well, the state looks at us as people who are supposed to be enforcers of the law. And it's precisely that sense, that overweening sense of authority, which led to the crime that got committed in this Tamil Nadu case. Okay, so it's a small sort of place in southern Tamil Nadu called as Thottakudi. ये उसका एक छोटा कस्बा है Sathankulam नाम का. And this is a case that happens in June 2020 in this place. The restriction is sometime early in the evening, I think 7:30 के आसपास. The shops were supposed to be closed. And there's this particular mobile shop which is open at 7:30 in the evening and has a huge crowd in front of it. And mobile shops did have crowds in COVID days for a simple reason, because for a lot of people in this world who were told to lock down, इसके अलावा उनका सचमुच दूसरा कोई दोस्ती नहीं था. So this was the only thing that was keeping them company. So obviously, if there was something wrong with it, if it needed a top up, if there was something or the other that you needed to do with it, you would go to the mobile shop. आप जाओगे किधर जाओगे? कि आपका एक ही साथी था उन दिनों में, आपका दूसरा कोई साथी नहीं था. And that's the reason why one can understand. There was just a couple of places which were heavily blocked during COVID times. Medicine and pharmaceutical shops, places where food was available, both cooked, uncooked, or whatever it would be. Places where liquor was available, and mobile shops. इसके अलावा कुछ भी नहीं था. It was a bad sort of time altogether. So along comes this policeman who goes about arresting this 58-year-old man named as Jairaj. कि आपको बोला गया था कि आपको दुकान बंद करने का है, एंड टाइमिंग खत्म होने के बाद भी आपका दुकान चालू है. And on top of it, it has a huge crowd. So the whole idea that there's a huge crowd, you're not supposed to crowd, because that is the primary protocol of the COVID times, that there should be no crowding whatsoever. So you keeping the shop open is precisely why you have a crowd. So you're responsible for it. Okay, so they take him to the police station and they start beating him. Now the story is कि इसके पहले दिन या इसके 2 दिन पहले इसी बंदे के साथ इसी पुलिस स्टेशन के लोगों का एक पंगा हुआ था. in the sense that there was some talk of violence between the two sides, and there was just a talk about again the same problem of the shops not getting closed at the time at which they were supposed to be closed. Okay, and anyone who remembers those times would know this for sure. Most of us have dealt off with that sort of a situation in which shop सामने से तो बंद था, पीछे से चालू था, because दूसरा कोई तरीका ही नहीं था. There was something that you wanted, there was something that they wanted. So आपको कुछ खरीदना है, उनको कुछ बेचना है. The restriction is things have got to be closed because time खत्म हो चुका है. And time खत्म होने के बाद भी बेचना और खरीदना चालू है in a clandestine manner. And that's a normal experience that we all had. Okay, but then there was this whole talk of some sort of a violence between the two sides, the police as well as Jairaj, couple of days before this incident, in terms of who would deal with whom in what manner, if at all the shop stays open. Okay, ये दुकान बाजार में है. This is like a crowded marketplace, and the first people who rush to the police station, the minute they know that the police have arrested Jairaj, are the other shopkeepers in the vicinity. So they're the ones who stay outside the police station. They're the ones who accompany the father and the son all over the place. They're the ones who create that vast amount of crisis about this whole thing, that there's something very wrong with the way in which the police have dealt with them. So after some time, after Jairaj is brought into the police station and he's beaten up by the police, his son, who is running a second shop in the same marketplace in some other lane, goes to the police station with the idea of sort of rescuing his father and getting him back home. And then the police have now not one case to deal with, but two cases to deal with. शाम को 8 बजे के आसपास उनका धुलाई शुरू होता है, and it goes on till almost the best part of the night. And while it is going on within the police station, you have the shopkeepers from the vicinity, their friends, their family members who have gathered outside the police station. Okay, and these people keep on getting beaten up, badly beaten up. Some of those descriptions are extremely graphic, and they are very horrible in terms of how were they beaten up and what exactly happened with them and so on and so forth. दूसरे दिन they are taken to a magistrate. The magistrate remands them to police custody. Along the way, you have a medical officer who has gone through them. You have a magistrate who has gone through them, and none of these people suspect that there is anything wrong which has happened along the way. None of them even talk to the two people. Okay, 2 days after the beatings, the son is first dead at around 9:30 in the night, and the father dies hour after that. And after that, you have all hell breaking loose. Okay, so the first level obviously are the other shopkeepers in the vicinity, the family and the friends, who start a sustained social media campaign that there has been something horrible which has happened in this case, and the police need to be investigated for whatever they have done. Okay, COVID times, interesting times, we had all the time in the world to catch up with each other. Case goes places for a simple reason, because you have a lot of other people, both within Tamil Nadu as well as outside Tamil Nadu, who joined the hashtag of justice for Jairaj and Benix. Benix being the son. The father is 58 years old, the son is 31 years old. So you have all sorts of celebrities coming into the picture. 2020 के जून के महीने की हम बात कर रहे हैं. 2021 April, almost something similar to this, is when Tamil Nadu will go for assembly elections. So this is almost the end as far as the old assembly is concerned, and Tamil Nadu is already moving towards that sort of political campaign. So there's a certain sort of heightened political tension in the air. Okay, the chief minister goofs up along the way. The chief minister is this man called as E.P. Palaniswamy. And what Palaniswamy goes about doing is he makes a statement on the floor of the house that Jairaj had a pre-existing medical condition, which he did have. Nobody wants to deny that. But then that wasn't the cause of death. Okay, the cause of death was the police have beaten you up to the point of you bleeding profusely and you ultimately dying as a result of these beatings, which were not attended medically to the same level to which they should have been attended to. So, ये बीच वाले 2 दिन जो है between the death and the beatings were 2 days in which they are remanded to judicial custody. They are moved from one place to the other place. And you have precious time been lost along the way in terms of the fact that they should have been treated in that time. But given the fact that there's hardly any treatment coming through, things keep on getting aggravated to the point that finally it results in the death of the 2 people on the 2nd day, on the 3rd day. So the political climate in the state is becoming different. You have people from all across the world who are sort of contributing to the outrage. And you automatically have a certain sort of a situation in which the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court decides to take suo motu cognizance of the case. Okay, और ये सब रेयर है, ये सब रेयर है. अगर ये कोविड के टाइम पे नहीं हुआ होता तो शायद इसमें से कुछ भी नहीं हुआ होता. Okay, so neither would you have had got a social media outrage, nor would you have had got all those cricketers and celebrities going and signing up on the hashtag, nor would you have had got that political outrage, nor would you have had got the judiciary stepping in. People, as I said, 5 people die in police custody across the republic practically every day. Nobody bothers their head with it. We don't even know the names of half the people who are dead. Okay, but this happened during COVID times. You had all the time in the world to watch the world around you because there was nothing else that you were doing. So, since you had nothing else to do, लोगों को क्या क्या दिख रहा था, क्या बताएं हम उन दिनों की भी बात. So, people sitting in their homes could look at the Himalayas in North India. That's a different story altogether. But then since so much was visible, obviously injustice was clearly visible. And once it catches a certain life online, then obviously it triggers a lot of reactions all over the place. So the court takes suo motu cognizance of this and the court orders a judicial investigation. When the magistrate from the court goes to the police station for inquiry, the magistrate goes back filing a report saying this, that I couldn't complete my work, was the climate in the police station was very hostile to my inquiring into their affairs. Okay, so they trailed me, they refused me documents, they hounded me, they sort of humiliated me. There were people who, when I asked them questions, walked out on me. So all of that. And after that comes the Madurai High Court, the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court, deciding that the police station needs to be sealed off. कि ये सारी हरकतों को अगर उनके अंजाम तक पहुंचाना है तो the only thing that can be done is the police officials who are in charge of the police station need to be deprived of that charge. The station is duly sealed off. The station is handed over to the revenue department. All the evidence is secured. And now you have a completely new sort of investigation which is conducted into everything. And sort of the chips start falling into place. Okay. Couple of months down the line, one of the other police officials who was implicated in the case is dead and gone. The other 9 have been arrested. Proceedings have been instituted against them. The evidence clearly points towards custodial torture. So, they did try to clean up the bloodstains, but bloodstains were available on the furniture within the police station, on the floors, on the walls, and so on and so forth. So, one is a set of evidences which is about friends and family gathered outside who could clearly hear the beatings, the cryings, the moanings, and so on and so forth. B is the circumstantial evidence within the police station, which speaks volumes for itself. C is evidence in the form of omissions. So CCTV footage has been duly sabotaged. So you have things falling into place. Okay. Along the way comes a woman police constable who is a party to the proceedings, who, looking at the severity of the situation, sort of now has all the incentive in the world to go about recording her statement, which details the entire story of custodial torture. So at what point of time did the beating start? At what point of time did they come to a close? What happened along the way? Who said what to whom? She details everything. There's a woman called as Revati, who was part of the team. At one point, they ask her to join in the beatings and she refuses to do so. And then there comes a point where she asks them to stop and they refuse to do so. Okay, so she's the one who goes about detailing practically everything in terms of exactly Jairaj को custody में लेने के बाद हुआ तो क्या हुआ, किसने क्या किया, किसने किसको क्या कहा, at what point of time did they start passing out, at what point of time did they start bleeding, at what point of time did we start noticing this and noticing that. She details out everything. Okay. Unfortunately enough, after putting everything in the statement, she refuses to sign the statement. Because sort of she has second thoughts about this whole problem. If she signs it, what she would be doing is she would be like giving up on her comrades. People that she has worked with, people who are co-workers. So it sort of to her at some point of time starts looking like a grave act of treachery. कि like जिन लोगों के साथ आपने अभी तक काम किया है, जिन लोगों के साथ आपने सोशलाइज किया है, सब कुछ किया है, एक तरह से आप उनको धोखा दे रहे हो. But then when she goes back to it and she looks at everything, finally she does sign it. And this becomes a part of the court's record as far as the evidences are concerned, and it's the most substantive evidence in terms of implicating all of them. The court comes up with its decision, and the judgment is very, very interesting. So ये अभी का judgment जो है, जो court ने pass किया है, sort of can be read all by itself very independently. With the whole, the court's problem is, we can remand them to life imprisonment, but then after 14 years they'll be coming back. And looking at their conduct during the trial, it doesn't seem that they're ever going to feel remorse about whatever they have done. So the court does agree with the fact that it's a rarest of a rare case. It's a rarest of a rare judgment in terms of convicting 9 people, and awarding the death sentence to 9 people. This is like a rarest of a rare thing. So the court's idea is, well, we can easily put them behind bars for a term of life imprisonment, but doesn't seem that that is what is going to make them feel bad about anything. Possibly there is going to be no remorse, and there's just no way by which you can go about correcting their ways. And that's the reason why the court feels that the death penalty is the best thing that can happen to them. Okay, so, and of course, for a simple reason, because in the course of the night, not each one of these 9 people share the responsibility for the death of these 2 people in a similar manner. So there's something uneven about it. So maybe some of them are more responsible for the beatings and more responsible for the death, and some of them are possibly not that responsible for the beatings and that responsible for the death. And the court is aware of this unevenness, and yet the court goes about declaring that, well, but nevertheless, all 9 of them are involved in it, for a simple reason, because neither did they stop, nor did they make any effort to stop anybody of them. And that's the reason why this is something that should happen. There's absolutely no reason why it should happen. For a lot of people from the human rights fraternity, from the police reforms fraternity, from people who want a better judicial system in India, the problem is the death penalty is not going to solve anything. Because, as I said, you have at least half a dozen cases happening across the Republic practically every single day. Despite the fact that one knows about it, that not all of them are about torture, a lot of them do involve police high-handedness. And that goes without saying. Okay, so in that sort of a situation, is this going to reform the system, the death penalty to these 9 police officials? The answer is no. Is this going to make things any different? The answer is no. Okay, ये किस्सा 2021 में हुआ. 2025 में you have a similar sort of a case happening in Tamil Nadu, which is called as the Ajit Kumar case, in which this 25-year-old man is killed. Those police officials are yet undergoing trial. Okay, so this hasn't stopped anything. This isn't going to stop anything. So the simple problem is, what are you going to do with 9 people being hanged? The institutional problems which you have got to deal with, are not going to go away just because of the fact that these 9 people are dead. Okay, the court, the judgment acknowledges the fact that the death penalty awarded to these 9 people will put some sort of a fear in the minds of those police officials who have a mind to do something wrong. And in the minds of those who have a mind to go about doing right, this punishment is definitely not going to act as a deterrent to whatever they go about doing. So the court is aware of the problems involved in carrying out this death penalty, in dealing with this death penalty, and yet the court insists on the death penalty, which is very interesting, as possibly the only available way by which you can do justice as far as those 2 people are concerned. Okay, the community involved looked at them as excellent sort of business people, with not a blemish to their credit, with nothing wrong about them in the way in which they went about conducting their businesses. And that's the reason why the community is highly involved in the matter. So when the judgment was delivered, the session courts in Madras, in Madurai, was jam-packed. It was a situation, as the newspapers have reported, as if the whole town had come into the court to witness the proceedings and to hear the judgment being delivered. So they were like extremely popular with the people around, and that's the reason why the case could go to the sort of logical culmination that it did. But does it solve anything? So for people on the opposite side, the problem is you hanging these people is not going to solve anything. The 2 people dead are not definitely going to come back just because of the fact that you have gone about hanging 9 people. So ये इस तरह से काम नहीं करता है. And that's the reason why should you hang them or should you leave them in prisons to come to a point where they can realize the way in which they have gone about doing is something that is completely wrong, and they should feel wrong about it. Well, that's one school of thought. Whereas the other one believes in this, that with the sort of resources which we have, with the sort of institutional impunity which we have, it's high time that somebody pays for it. And this is their way of deciding that it needs to be paid for it. The one thing that has just not been talked about in all of this were the COVID restriction protocols themselves. So the protocols which demanded on things being closed at a certain time, on social distancing, on not crowding, on so on and so forth. Well, the protocols are not being called into question. The protocols are not being thought about in a country as densely populated as India. So if you look at places like Thoothukudi or Madurai or any one of them, if you think in terms of population density per square kilometer, was it even possible to go about enforcing those types of restrictions? Okay, and this not even getting started with the economic levels of people involved, the financial crisis that a lot of people face. We are not even delving into that, but starting off from something as sheer and simple as is possible. Can you go about enforcing social distancing norms which come from WHO manuals? Okay, which ideally are looking at European or American situation, in a country which has a population density as high as that? Is that at all possible to go about enforcing something like this? Why did the government come up with these types of restrictions? Did it give any thought to it as to in the Indian situation? How are you going to exactly go about implementing it? You might as well ask yourself that question, no? When the Prime Minister went to the Israeli Parliament to address the Parliament, the Fatherland, Motherland speech, did he at all think about this? That if the war starts and if the Strait of Hormuz gets closed, what exactly is the impact that it is going to produce as far as we in India are concerned? On we, the people of India, as the preamble says. So you might as well ask that question. Like, was he thinking of that when he was talking about that fatherland, motherland business? Was he thinking about it? Was he aware that the Israelis were going to start bombing Iran the minute he flies out of their capital? And if that happens, what was the situation that it was going to produce in India? Looking at the response all the way down the line, 5 weeks down the line, ever since it has started, it's so self-evident. ना तो उस टाइम पे सोचा गया था, ना इस टाइम पे सोचा गया था. इसका सीधा मतलब ये है कि when the COVID protocols were being enforced in India, the government of India never thought about this as to do these protocols need some tweaking in the Indian condition? Do they need to be different in the Indian condition? No. He goes on air, he suddenly declares there's a lockdown, everything is closed, you can find a way to your home, we are not worried about it, the trains are shut, everything is shut. You might as well walk down from Gurgaon to Bihar. That is not shut. So जब कुछ सोचा ही नहीं गया, तो on the ground, when the police are handed out these protocols to enforce, what they did is a natural outcome. There's nothing unnatural about it. Being a police is, in its own way, a source of authority as far as we in India are concerned. Empower him for an unusual sort of a situation, you are sort of empowering him with double the authority and with possibly no accountability. वो ये ना करेगा तो वो और क्या करेगा? Of course, doesn't take that away that yes, even if you hang all 9 of them, the 2 people dead are never going to come back. So, doesn't take that away. Doesn't sort of bring this. It definitely leaves that question open. Is this justice or is this revenge in some way? So, yes, the family did feel that justice was finally done to them. As most such families in the Indian condition do believe that justice is done to them when somebody gets punished for the wrong that has been committed against them. From a very objective perspective, is this really the way by which justice can be done? Is there some other way by which this can be done? And have we learned any lessons from it? Well, if you just look at some celebrated cases of police high-handedness across the states of India, since this case happened in 2020, we have learned no lessons. Nothing, absolutely nothing has been learned. This is not the first time, this is definitely not the last time. What's extraordinary is 9 police officials being awarded the death sentence at one and the same time. वो number जो है, वो number is something that is staggering. Of course, none of them are very senior sort of officials. So most of them are people who have come from the Tamil Nadu state public commission exams. You're not essentially talking about an IPS officer or something like that. So in that sort of a situation, you're talking of small fry. This is not like something very big that we are essentially dealing with. But then if you just try placing the story together, if you just look at its visuals, what stands out is the fact that, well, the people who have been wronged and the people who have wronged them, they don't seem very different from each other. They more or less seem to be people who are sharing a social situation with each other, sharing more or less the same economic status with each other. Language और बाकी सारी चीजें तो उनमें common है ही. So at no level does it seem that they are very different from each other. So, and that's the case across the country. So your most average police official that you interact with when you go to a police station is more or less very similar to you, except for the fact that he has an official position, he has a uniform, he has a sense of authority. Does he have a sense of duty? Well, that's a different story altogether. So, and we have been calling out for these types of reforms for almost the last 5 decades and more. So, the police in India need to be trained in approaching people that come to them with complaints, or in people that they go about investigating into in a more human manner. A lot of them do that. There's no doubt about it, because it's like a very simple thing. On the opposite side, ask yourself this question. If every police official in the country starts behaving in the way in which these 9 behaved, it won't be sort of too late before hell reaches each one of us. Okay, so if every police official decides to behave in that manner, life becomes hellish for all of us. It becomes bearable for a very simple reason, because a lot of them are not people like this. A lot of them definitely look at their duties and their jobs in a completely different manner, are people who are completely overwhelmed by the demands of the service, by the sort of working conditions in which they are, and do have that sense that, well, life is horrible in its own way. COVID was also the time, and of course, उस time पे ज़्यादा थे, since you do remember them, not that you don't have them as of now, when you would come across those cases of policemen committing suicide with their own service rifles. And this is also something that is not unheard of in this country. So, not being able to take any more the exigencies of the job which they are performing, the overbearing nature of the job which they are performing, completely frustrated with it, committing suicide. They have some of the worst health indicators. They're a completely overworked sort of species. So one does understand that. And yet one does come to cases like this with that whole sense of, well, it's the rarest of the rare in its own way. And yet, despite the fact that it has been punished in the way in which it has been punished, it shows no signs of the fact that institutionally there is going to be any learning about it. Because this learning is not going to start at the bottom. This learning has to start from the top. And at the top, it seems that there is no incentive to go about changing anything whatsoever. So every constable, every station officer, every person at the lower level as far as the police establishment is concerned, finds his own way in terms of how do you deal with the situation. What do you do with it? For a simple reason, because they have just learned to, somehow or the other negotiate and manage this. For a simple reason, because they are aware of the fact that there is nothing that is happening at the top which would lead to a transformation at the bottom. Budgets are not increasing. The government has no incentive in terms of putting in more people in the police forces. Maharashtra is the best example possible. वो इतनी सारी बहनाएं जो की है, अब वो एक तो मर गया बेचारा, बाकी बचे हुए 2 मुस्टंडों ने, उससे अच्छा तो ये होता, you could have gone about recruiting more women in the police forces. Simple. So instead of पहले तो सबको बहना बना लिया, बाद में ढूंढते फिरे कि सचमुच बहना एलिजिबल भी है या नहीं है. Then told them that नहीं, आपको पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे, ये नहीं होगा. Then suddenly found कि बहन नहीं भाई है. ये इतने तो होशियार है हमारे लोग. वो उससे अच्छा तो ये होता, you could have gone about recruiting more women in the police forces. That would have led to a more sustainable transformation as far as the lives of these women are concerned. Look at what sort of politicians which you have. In a state like Maharashtra, ये अगर इतने गए गुजरे और पॉइंटलेस किस्म के लोग हैं, तो बेचारे बंगाल, बिहार, यूपी वालों से और क्या उम्मीद करना? At the bottom, they have sort of learned. You will have to find your way around this. You'll have to do something at your own level about this. For a simple reason, because the top doesn't bother about you. They're not interested. You have tons of those types of cases. We had those types of cases even now. People being recruited in the police forces in the most grueling of conditions, where invariably somebody is going to end up dead. Are they worried? Not at all. So where the top shows no sort of incentive in terms of transforming anything at the bottom is left with its own devices in terms of negotiating your way around all of this. And that's exactly what they go about doing. But first you have the state creating that situation wherein lawlessness can prevail. Then you have the state sitting up and taking note of the lawlessness. And now you have this sort of a situation in which they're going to be hanged and possibly nobody is worried about it. अच्छा, ये लोग ऐसा करते हैं, इसका कम से कम तमिलनाडु में the most surprising thing is 2014 or 2015, thereof while New India was just getting established, Tamils went to the theatres to see this very stunning film that is called as Visaranai. It's a normal police procedural, slightly lengthy hai, of this very renowned Tamil director called as Vetrimaran, in terms of 4 simple laborers who get caught up in police nexus of torture at the police station. And how by the time the film comes to an end, practically all of them are dead. Okay, and it's a stunning film. विसर ने अपनी तरीके का शायद इकलौता फिल्म है. Of course, after that you had the Patal Loks and the Kohras of the world getting made. पर उसके इन सब के पहले अगर कुछ था तो वो विसर नहीं था. Of course, इस सब के पहले अगर कुछ था तो वो अर्ध सत्य था. You had tons of those types of stories, films about how overworked are the Indian police. How the nature of their work brings out the worst from within them, and what are the social consequences of that worst getting manifested. So you have tons of those types of stories across all Indian languages. You have films being made on it. You have everything being done about it. And yet, in terms of the actual experience of policing, you find hardly anything changes. But it's part of a larger institutional whole. And until and unless an institutional thing doesn't undergo a change, to believe that something like this is going to undergo a change, it's way too much. Absolutely way too much. Okay, so I just believe that for most of you who are preparing for your civil services, might be interested in a career in policing, this is a case that you should definitely be heeding and looking at a lot. Okay, in terms most importantly of trying to come up with your own perspective about it. So जो लोग कह रहे हैं या जो जजमेंट में कहा गया है वो सब अपनी जगह पे है, जैसे मैंने उसको स्ट्रक्चर करने का कोशिश किया. But besides that, what is your own perspective about it? As a prospective civil servant, might be headed to the police departments, how do you look at it? What sense do you make of it? At your own level, how would you deal with a situation like this? Okay, so those are the more interesting questions that stay opened up as far as people doing civil services is concerned. And that's the reason why I decided that we better talk about this before you have other things happening and somehow or the other this been sort of forgotten and never been remembered. Tons of police officials across the country. West Bengal is a classical case. Of course, the ECI being the sort of fraud organization that it presently is, I don't want to credit it with anything. बट इस इलेक्शन में वेस्ट बंगाल क्लासिकल केस था जहाँ पे द ECI ordered police officials to be transferred. And this happens practically with all elections all across the country at different points of time, that you need to go about transferring police officials. So on the verge of elections, why do you transfer police officials? For a simple reason, because maybe down the line you would come across the same police officers retiring from their services and joining political parties, contesting elections. You do have people who have done that. Some who have succeeded, some who have not succeeded. ये एक बहुत ही नॉर्मल रूटीन किस्म का मामला है. एंड ऑफ कोर्स these are the higher ups. These are not people who go about manning police stations. They go about manning police jurisdictions. So these are higher ups. These are people invariably जो IPS officers होते हैं. So retiring from your services, seeking retirement before it is due, joining a political party, contesting elections, winning, coming through, not unusual. Do you enjoy doing that? There's a certain man called as R.K. Singh in Bihar, who's a member of parliament, who resigned from the police forces. Ask him as to how great was his experience. He will tell you a lot about it. There's a lot which he has anyway said, which is there online. You can take a look at that also. So is that at all a great sort of an experience? For a lot of them, definitely not. Because jitna lucrative politics आपको लगता है from your position as a police official, after leaving that position as a police official and actually joining politics, you start realizing that it is way too dirty, way too disgusting, and way too bad. So I don't know. I just thought that this needs to be talked about, and that's the reason why I brought it up. Of course, as I said, कि केस अपने लॉजिकल एंड तक अगर जाएगा तो वो अपील्स में जाएगा, and there's quite a possibility, at least if it goes to the Supreme Court of India, the Supreme Court of India is definitely not going to uphold the death sentence. It might ask them to be put in for maybe 2 life imprisonments at one and the same time or something like that, but definitely because ऐसे काफी सारे केसेस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट डेथ सेंटेंस को अपहोल्ड नहीं करता है. वो उसका हिस्ट्री होने की वजह से one knows this for sure, that if this case winds up its way to the Supreme Court of India, there's quite a possibility that the Supreme Court of India is definitely not going to uphold the death sentence. Okay, but that's how things are as of now, and that's the reason why I decided. And of course, are we an exception in India? No. You have just got to look at all the problems between common people and police officials in the United States. All those wonderful cases of people getting killed in police shootings. You have got to take a look at the sort of problems that we presently have between police and societies across Europe, in so many other parts of the world, to realize, yeah, George Floyd अपने तरीके का, I don't know, Janvi, if you can take a look at that and make sense of it. George Floyd comes from Minneapolis. George Floyd तो गया, but Minneapolis as a place which is hit by police action carries on with these other 2 people in the recent past who have been killed in Minneapolis by the ICE agents. Okay, so you have tons of those types of cases. The problems between people living in the slums in Brazil and its police, people living in slums in Kenya and its police, people living in slums and middle class localities in Nigeria and its police. Oh my God, I can sit and keep on listing all those types of things till almost 12 o'clock in the night, और वो कभी खत्म नहीं होगा. The way in which Vladimir Putin's police deals with the Russians, tons. So absolutely no reason why you should believe that it seems that there's something wrong with us in India. There's a lot wrong with all of this all over the world. And that's one of the reasons why you have some very smart sort of arguments being made in so many cases that possibly the police is not a part of any solution. We have got to look at the police as part of the problem itself. And if you want more secure societies, the solution possibly is not to put more police on the streets. The solution possibly is to do away with the police departments altogether. So you have some very smart arguments being made at that end. Might be convincing, might not be convincing. In America, in a lot of cities, there's this movement called as defund the police. The idea that what needs to be done is you need to shut down the police forces. Because that's possibly the only one way by which you can secure your cities and make them more safer. Okay, but of course, वो अपने उनके अपने experiences से आता है, उनके अपने observations से आता है, inferences से आता है. There are tons of those types of studies which are available. So you have some absolutely smart studies all across the world pointing out to the fact that the police, being the sort of people that they are, trained in what they are possibly people who contribute to the aggravation of situations of crimes rather than in some way or the other lessening them. And possibly to go in for more safe, secure sort of societies, you need to do away with the police altogether. Okay, I just don't know. I leave it open at your ends in terms of taking a look at it. As people who are going to go in for the civil services and possibly go to the police departments, tons of things. There are good examples all across the world that we all are learning from, and there are worst examples that we are trying to avoid. So it's like a common phenomena. It's all across the place. Don't at all feel that there's something very exceptional about us in India कि ये तमाम किस्म के अनफॉर्चुनेट वाक़ये खाली हमारे साथ ही होते हैं, तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. If you just look at, say for example, what the police are doing in so many other parts of the world, you would suddenly start realizing that yours possibly is a much better condition as compared to what they have over there. Okay, so anyway, but just think of that, just take a look at that, just make some sense of that. Institutional mechanisms that enhance or that in the first place create impunity amongst those in authority, though that's the sort of problem that needs to be checked at. That's actually something that really needs to be thought about and be worried about. Okay, ऐसा एक नमूना जो था जिसके बारे में unfortunately enough in the last session I didn't talk about, this is SIR wala exercise which has been happening in so many parts of the country. So this whole idea of people being told that they cannot vote because somehow or the other the election commission feels that you're not good enough for voting, compounded by the Supreme Court of India, which has told petitioners who have rushed to the court with that idea that 2 ही हफ्तों में हमारे यहाँ पे वोटिंग है और मेरा नाम लिस्ट में नहीं है, and they are refusing to entertain an appeal, and it seems that if you don't intervene, I won't be able to vote. And the court has told them that, well, if you're not able to vote as of now, doesn't mean that you won't be able to vote forever. Thereby almost suggesting that, अच्छा फिलहाल you can't vote, ठीक है, don't vote. Maybe next time you would be able to vote. The Supreme Court of India can take that sort of a position. Absolutely shocking. Absolutely. Tons, thousands of people. Bengal is going to go to vote on the 23rd of April. There are 27 lakh names deleted. The process of appealing the deletes seems to be designed with the idea that come whatever happens, we are going to keep up with the deletions. It's 5% of the total number of voters. And of course, they are all sorts of people who have been deleted. So you have this man called Nandlal Bose. I don't know if it rings a name. If the name rings something familiar. Constitution of India का जो handwritten copy है, जो पार्लियामेंट हाउस में अभी प्रिजर्व्ड है, उसके इलस्ट्रेशंस जो है वो मिस्टर बोस ने बनाए थे. So the first copy of the Constitution, which is handwritten and has these illustrations in between, Bose was absolutely stunning painter connected with the Shantiniketan school. And Nandlal Bose was one of these people who went about illustrating the Constitution. His grandson's name has been deleted. A man who has this problem that, sir, I've voted in all elections throughout my life. I'm the grandson of somebody who has illustrated the Constitution, and my name has been deleted. And the Supreme Court of India has told them absolutely unconcerningly that, well, ठीक है, अभी अगर नाम डिलीट किया गया, maybe अगले बार you will get to vote, don't worry. This is like designed to see to it that you can delete people. Okay, we are talking about that sort of pattern which has been created across the Republic. Whereas right at the top, there's a certain sense of impunity that you can go about exercising power in this manner, authority without any accountability. And as a consequence of it, if people suffer, well, let them go ahead and suffer, and nobody should be worried about it. So I just don't know. One of the most interesting things to watch for on the 4th of May is going to be how did this SIR exercise play itself out, and what came out of that. Okay, but there are big debates which are happening about where's the Republic headed, what all is going on, and they make for some very interesting reading as well as viewing in the present times in which we are. And it's definitely time to be concerned, very, very concerned about everything. Okay, with that, I submit my case and leave a good, nice, big chunk open for all sorts of questions, comments, issues, everything that we can think about and talk about. But then, as I said, वो Middle East वाला मामला जो है, don't ask me anything about it for a very simple reason, because since one of the parties is Trump, I have no guarantee about ये कैसे pan out होने वाला है. I'm more worried about it that the day on which this so-called 15-day ceasefire comes to an end is also the day on which I'm supposed to fly out. So मेरा primary concern वो है कि ये जिस दिन ceasefire खत्म होने वाला है, that's the day of my departure. So if unfortunately enough anything goes wrong, I'm more worried about that. So don't ask me anything on would this hold, would this not hold, who has won, who has lost. Well, we have got to wait for it for a simple reason, because one of the parties to it is Donald Trump. And to anything that Donald Trump is a party, you have got to have some patience. Okay, great. But of course, no reason why we should not raise questions or issues about that. We can talk about anything and everything under the sun.